Hey friends, welcome back. In part 1, Superfloof and I showed you how to take that messy testing spreadsheet and transform it into a real Power App testing tracker. Well, today in part 2, we're going to dive into the main screen. This is where your testers will actually see and work through their assigned tasks. We're going to teach you how to filter the gallery so each person only sees their tests. We're going to walk you through the pop-up modal where testers log results. We're going to set up conditional required fields so that notes and attachments are only required if a test fails. We're also going to wire up a patching statement so that when a tester marks their task as complete, the app automatically checks to see whether the whole task is finished. We're going to set up a Power Automate so that if someone marks a test as failed, IT gets notified right away. That's the real power of bringing this process into Power Apps. It keeps your data smart and your workflows connected. So by the end of this video, you'll have the main screen and tester workflows up and running. In the next part, we'll keep building it out step by step. So let's jump right in. Here we are in the finished app. This first screen shows the users, the testers, if you will, what tasks are assigned to them. This list is filtered by my user account, showing me all of the dummy data that's in here. This is not actual client-facing data. If they click on the little bug, it gives them the pop-up that we saw before. Now, this icon here is only visible to admins. So let's get started setting that up because we want the admins to be able to go into the back end to see where all the records are in testing, to be able to filter, to restart testing if we want. All of this information visible only to people who should be seeing it. Now we're also going to set up deep linking, which means that when someone gets notified of a failure or a report of something complete and needing review, they get automatically taken into the back end into this record. So that's deep linking. I've covered that in a previous video. I'll put that in the link description below. Also, remember, if you're a member of my channel, either in YouTube or Ko-fi, you can download all the working files from this, the Power Automates, the schema, and the Power App, so you can dig into it and play with it on your own. Let's look at the code behind the admin access. So if we click on the icon here, it's visible only when var is admin, the variable is true. Now there's a little bit more going on here. I have rotation going on. So when they click on this icon, it's going to rotate 15 degrees. Now how it does that is when you select it, we're updating context, and updating context is kind of like setting a variable, but it's only here in the screen. So we're taking the icon rotation, the variable, and we're adding 15 to it. And then we're navigating to the admin screen, and then we're refreshing the data set. You wouldn't have to do that. I just like to do that for housekeeping, if you will. So that'll take a user into the admin screen like you saw before. But how do we show this icon only to our admins? Let's dig into that. In our app on start, if we expand this out, the very first thing I'm doing is I'm setting a variable of the user that's logged into the app. Then we're going to scroll down a little bit. We're going to get into all of this eventually. Make sure you hit subscribe so you get notified of all the future videos. Here we're getting our admins. So we're creating a collection from our SharePoint list, and we're only showing the columns of the admin's record, the entire user profile, and then their email. And the reason we're grabbing the email is because the very next step in our onStart is we're setting that variable. Set var is admin. If there is a user in there where the email matches the user's email that's logged into the app, then it's true. Otherwise, it's false. So our main screen is set up as a header and footer screen. This guy here, the one you've seen me use in plenty of videos before. We have a label right here giving the user the feedback of what app they're in. And then we have a header container. So within the main container, because I'm a lazy IT person, I like to use containers so everything lays out for me, we have a horizontal container. And within the horizontal container, we have the label for the headers. We have the department, the section, the what to test, and the description. And the description is set up with flexible width, meaning it's going to fill the space that's given. That's important because as we go into the gallery, each one of these labels, and if I start here with the title, its X matches the label's X. And I know it's kind of hard to see on the blue, but there's a green box around the label. The Y is set to be centered within the template of the gallery. The width is the label width, and the height is just that default height. So as we move on to the second one here, the section, this shouldn't be subtitle, this should be section. I'm going to rename that right now. And I'm going to rename this module, if I can type. This is so that people who come into the app after you don't hate you. And you saw how easy that is. There's no reason to not go back when you catch yourself not naming stuff to name it properly. So the test here is this item is the title. We have the same X, it's the label's X. It's the width of the label. The height is that default one. And the Y is the Y of the first item. I only set the Y to be dynamic on the first, and then I reference everything back to it to make it easier for me in the long run. Now description, this is a big guy. We have auto height turned on, and you'll see it's wrapping over the bug. Now technically I should add in some logic to auto width minus the bug, but this screen is big enough that I didn't need to. You might need that. And another way of doing that is to add this bug icon in the header in the same location and reference, then when you set this one to be width fill, the bug will be taken out of it, the icon. Now on top of all that, I have a button, and this is a modern button, and if you don't have modern settings turned on, you would come here to updates and turn on modern controls. And the reason I like to do this is to give the user the feedback that when they move their mouse over something, it changes from an arrow to a finger. I've covered this in previous videos. But that button is got no text, and if we scroll down, it's transparent. It's simply to give the user the feedback of what's going on. Now, when you create a gallery, it automatically gives you the icon here. It sets you up with all the Y's and X's. I'm lazy, I just changed the icon. So this button is just calling this icon. Now what happens when we select that icon? We're setting a variable called var this item to this item from the gallery. We're setting var complete to true, and that gives us that pop-up modal. We're setting the var form mode to new because within that pop-up there is a form. And then we're setting a variable called var attachments to false. Now what does all that mean? Let's click the button and look at this. So when we click that button, it is showing us a new container on top of everything else. You know why your end user is getting confused? This is just what has worked for me in various different client settings. You could do this in different fashions, different colors. I have a container, just a regular container sitting on top of the main screen container, and I have a little bit of a gradient on there. If we click on color, you can see 0.65. And then on top of that, I have another container sitting in the middle of it, and its X is set to this formula, which will center it. The Y is the same formula, centered. The width is the parent times 75%, and the height is dependent on whether or not attachments is shown. That's where we're using var attachments. If var attachments is true, the parent height is 95%. And if it's not, then it's 75%. Now what does that mean? If we're looking at it right here, it's kind of ugly, but you can see how when we click this toggle on change is setting var attachments to self.value. That's the nice thing about using a toggle, is it's either true or false. So if it's false, the height of this container is 75%. If it's true, it's 95% because we have to have room to do attachments. Now as we move down, again, lazy person here, I have a vertical container because that'll stack everything for me. I have a label of var this item. So from the gallery, it's the title of the record for the department value with a dash, testing section, and do you want to mark it as complete? Then we have a form. Now within our form, we have a combination of default choice columns as well as some custom combo boxes. So here within the severity, they wanted to be able to change this. So this severity in combo box is showing a collection, the call severity collection. If we expand this out, we're getting display text and value. Now where are we getting that from? We're getting that from our app on start. Here's where we set it. We're creating a collection called call severity. with a value and a display text. And the reason for this is they wanted to be able to show text that was different than the value, but in the back end, on the actual individual testing record items, this is every time that someone marks a test as pass or fail, and it could go back and forth multiple times, so this is a separate list, covered that in the previous video. The severity is just a number column. So on the app on start, this collection is created, and within the data card for the form, I've replaced the default combo box with one, and I've renamed it CB severity, and it gives us our critical highs, mediums, and non-criticals, and then captures in the back end the number values. This is tested yes or no, pass or fail. Now let's look at this combo box here, because there's some stuff going on. When you select this combo box, we're setting another variable called call var screenshots required. Now, if the data card value, this combo box, selected value equals fail, then that is true. So if we double click on this now, it's going to show us right here that it's false. If I change this to true or fail, you see a whole lot of stuff happens. But let's stick here for a sec. var screenshot, if I double click on it, now shows as true. Power Apps gives you that feedback right in the app. It's so nice. If we look here within the app, within the form, we're going to scroll down to notes. The required field on this is just working off that same drop down. If its selected value is fail, it's required. If not, it's not required. Could I have used the same variable? Yes. I want to show you multiple ways of doing the same thing. Now, outside of the form, I'm going to minimize the form again. Within that vertical container, we have a horizontal container. And why we have the horizontal container is because I wanted to be able to conditionally do different things. So within this container, this is just a normal container, I have three things going on. I have this label, screenshots required, and its visible property is that same var screenshots required. I have that toggle that we've used before, and on change it's setting the variable. Then we have a label for it. And the label's Y is set to be centered within the container, and the toggle is set to be next to the attachment as well as centered. And the reason for that is this supporting docs attachment field, it's only visible if var attachments is true. So if I set this to pass, you'll notice that the container size changes because the container height for this is not a variable height or flexible height. It's setting it dynamically off of that var attachments. Remember, if you subscribe to the channel, you can download all the files from this and poke around as much as you like. So if var attachments is true, this container is 150 high. If it's not, it's only 50. So let's try that again. Fail. It's 150, and we're seeing the var attachments, supporting doc attachments field here. I've done a video on how you can do the attachments before. Go back and watch that. Then the next container down is another horizontal container where we have our two buttons. So on the select of this first button, if var screenshot is required, we are calling a flow. We're calling a flow called software testing report fail to help desk. So if this is marked as a fail, we write that to the list, and then we call a Power Automate. Now let's look at what we're doing here. We're capturing information from our variable var this item. We're getting the variable or the value of the ID, which is going to be a number now that we said it is a value. We're getting the title text. We're getting the display of the severity, which is the whole thing, the one dash. We're getting some additional information, the user email and the user full name. And then we're submitting the form. So we're doing the flow first because there's stuff going on in the form submit that we're going to get into after we look at the flow. So let's look at the flow first, and then we'll look at the form on submit or on success functionality, because that's where all the patching happens. So I'm going to right click on the Power Automate, click edit. Now when you open a Power Automate from Power Apps, it's going to open it up in the classic form. We could go to make.powerautomate.com and pull it up there and it would be modern for you. But this is quick and easy. So from the Power App, we're passing it the master ID. That's going to be a number. That's why we had to do it as a value. That's going to be the master ID of the main record. And then we're entering the title of the text, the severity, the notes, the email address of the tester, and the tester's name, all those variables that we set. And then we're sending an email. And dev tenant, so it's going to my husband. He is the help desk. And here's some HTML and the deep link. I've covered deep linking before. It's in the comments or in the description below. So here's where we're doing everything. So because we're deep linking, I had to turn on the HTML. Let me pause and show you the email. Here's the email that he got, and this is what that HTML will look like. I know that's ugly, but you can figure it out. If you can't, let me know in the comments. So I, Steph Marshall, with my email address, reported a software testing failure. What was tested that failed, the severity, there's the 3- medium, tester's notes, and here's a link to the app for him. And because he's an admin, right, we're using deep linking, it takes him right into the record for this testing step. And because I've been testing, right, this gives us, and we're going to cover this in a future video, so make sure you hit subscribe. This shows that Stephanie has completed her testing of the 2 assigned testers, so we're still waiting for Baron to finish. And in one of the previous rounds of testing, I uploaded a screenshot. And because I want to make this as user-friendly as possible, you can view the screenshot right from the app. I just uploaded a picture of Power Automate. But that is what that Power Automate does. Now let's go back to the testing and let's look at the form on success functionality. Here we are in the form on success. So for the form on success, we needed to handle quite a few different things at once. So first, before we did anything else within this process, we emailed the help desk if there was a failure. Now, if there wasn't a failure, is the person that's submitting the pass one of only one tester, or are they one of many testers? And does this test result mark the entire thing as complete? That means if it's the first tester or the final tester or somewhere in between, we need to be able to capture that. So in our main SharePoint list, and let me pull that, I got really clever with my naming conventions here. So for each test, we have assigned testers. It could be one or it could be many. And then I have a column over here called done testers. And the reason for this is we needed to be able to track if the entire test step was complete or not. So if we go back to the Power App, and I'm going to minimize this for a minute, hit cancel here. We're going to go back into here. So you see how in the main record, and I'll make this bigger, we have who it was assigned to and who, if it's complete or not. And if it's not complete, we have red or green, different things going on here. So we needed a way to know if each step, when they hit submit, if it was marking the entire test as complete or not. Now we can't do that just on a button click. I had to do it on the form on success. So let's look at that from the top down. So first, if there were no errors, if everything on the form was submitted correctly, no server errors or anything like that, we start a spinner. And I've covered spinners in previous apps or previous videos, so let me know if you want me to cover that. Basically what this is because we have screenshots possibly being uploaded, that can take a red hot minute. We didn't want the users clicking submit, 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 submit. So when they hit submit, they get the feedback. There's a little spinner that goes until the process is done to keep them from hitting the button multiple times. Now, as we're moving down, if there is a screenshot, and we only allowed them to do one, so there's no for all loop, we are capturing that screenshot and uploading it to a SharePoint library tied to the master ID. So the very first thing from this Power Automate, if we look at this Power Automate, screenshot upload, and I've covered this in a previous video as well, we're capturing the master ID and we're adding that to the metadata of the file within the SharePoint library. So master ID, the screenshot title, the screenshot itself, we're creating the file, then we're updating the properties to tag it with the master ID, and then we're letting the flow know, respond back to the Power App that we're done. So I've covered that in a previous video. It'll be down in the description. Here's where it gets tricksy. Off of the variable screenshot required from our main form, if it's not, we start an approval for each submission that isn't a fail. So if we go back here and we look at our gallery for this item, so we're actually filtering out the checklist. If the user is an assigned tester and the user is not in that done testers list, or in that done testers people picker. So we're already filtering this by they're assigned, but they're not in done yet. So if we go back to the form, expand this out a bit more. So if it's not a fail, we're going to write a record to a list, and that's this list here. We are going to capture the title. We're going to tie it back to the master ID. We're going to say that the tester has completed their work, and then we're going to kick off an approval process. That is for all of these stages. That's what the requirements were for this. For every user, we're going to have 2 approvers. And when we originally started this, they wanted 2 approvers for every 1 tester. And you can see here I've done some testing. So for this one, Baron was the tester, I and Rose were the approvers, and it's whoever approves first. So in this case, it was approved today. Here's the date, the comments, and this is legacy from when they wanted both testers to do it. I talked them out of it because that just seemed like way too much overhead. So that's legacy. That won't be in the files if you download it, but that kicks off this list. So if we go back here, then we're creating a collection. We're creating a collection called Done Testers, and we're getting it from the record that we clicked on in the gallery, because we know that the user that clicked on the record in the gallery is not in Done Testers. So we're capturing the users that were in Done Testers, and then we're adding to that collection the current user. And we're doing that by leveraging all of their information here. This is where it gets fun. So we had to compare our Done Testers to the assigned testers, and if they matched, we set a variable called completed to true, and if it didn't, we set the variable completed to false. Now, why we did that is because if you look down here on the main item, the main testing checklist, and let me pull that up here, main testing checklist, if the done testers match the assigned testers, if they're same off the email addresses, because names could be the same, right? Email addresses are one source of truth because you know there's not 2 John.Smiths in your organization. We go back to the main record and we mark it as complete. And we let the end user know that it was completed successfully. Now we've come a long way down in the code and it's easy to get lost. One of the nice things about Power Apps is if I just put my mouse here at the comma, what is that comma for? And I scroll up, you'll see here that there's a bit of a gradient behind the paren on this if statement. So you're able to go back up in your code and look at where everything was. So if var screenshot was not required, we covered that, but if it is required, if this is a failure, what do we do if there's a failure? For this use case, we're capturing a variable called var done testers. Because if someone marks this as a failure, we're going to restart all stages of testing. It's going to go back to a blank, and all the users have to retest. Once the help desk gets their email notification, makes a change, then they come back in to restart testing. But we wanted to capture who had already completed their work. We didn't want to just blank it out and have no record of Stephanie tested, marked it as a failure, went to the help desk, they fixed it, but there was no record of Stephanie already doing her work. So we're capturing a variable who was in the done testers. We're capturing their display name and their email. And then we're patching back to the main record the notes for capturing that. So we capture the notes that were there before, and we're saying that I, or the user that marked it as a fail, restarted testing due to a failure that had been completed by, and we say the other users who had already marked it as complete, failure testing restarted. And then we're patching back to the done testers SharePoint column, var this item dot blank person. What does that mean though? What is blank person? At the time of this recording, you cannot set a SharePoint people picker to just be blank. You have to overwrite with something. So if we go in and we look at my SharePoint list at the column blank person, it's a people picker, but it's a hidden people picker. It's not shown in the default views. It's not used anywhere. It's just people only, and it'll always be blank. So when we patch, we're able to patch that column from that item and overwrite the done testers. So it's kind of a workaround. It's what we had to do at the time of this recording. Then we're notifying, if it was a failure, testing for this item restarted due to a failure, help desk has been notified. We set the var spinner to false. We set the variable vol complete to false because we're cleaning up our variables. We're setting var this item to blank, cleaning up variables. We're resetting the attachment field. We're resetting the form. We're setting the var form mode back to new. We didn't really have to do that. And I'm setting the var this item to blank again. I don't remember why. But having it too many times is not necessarily a bad thing. At some point in testing, I had to do it. So that is all of the patching that we needed to do to mark a single record as done. There's a lot going on there. Hit subscribe and like the channel because the next video we're going to cover how we handle the back end here. We're going to talk about setting up all the filters. We're going to set up how we handle all of these modern tabs and set up all this. We're going to talk about how we restart testing, how we capture all this. We'll cover all of this in the next few videos. Happy coding! If you found this tutorial helpful, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below. Let us know your thoughts, questions, and any topics you'd like us to cover in future videos. Sharing is caring, so don't forget to share this tutorial with your fellow Power Apps enthusiasts. Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep rocking Power Apps like a true pro. See you in the next video.